I think what RFK, so the executive order that made all of these big headlines that Trump's taking your antidepressants, that RFK is coming after your antidepressants, is a very specific statement that was made. And it's in the executive order. And in the executive order, they specifically are talking about overmedication of children. Now, the concept is that we need to start fixing the underlying issues of health before we start overmedicating. I'm actually on board on this. There are a lot of kids who need it. Let's take a look at a kid who is obese, that their way of finding dopamine in life is to go eat, right? If I take that child who has poor eating habits and at this point has an insulin resistance issue, and even more so, we know that that sugar now has created dopamine pathways in their brain that every time that they feel stressed or every time they feel sad, their brain says, we need dopamine, they go eat. If I give them an SSRI, that doesn't fix that underlying problem with the dopamine. In fact, all it does is they still get to have that. I'm going to go look for dopamine, but then they're going to be like, but I don't feel stressed about it. So they're eating and they're having the same things, but they're not doing things to get healthy. Now, there is no world in which we don't make behavioral modifications with medications in which children get better and stay better. Behavioral modifications can go from exercise and eating right, which is one thing, or to removing them from very stressful situations, like helping them at school where they're drowning and they don't have enough help, so we help them at school, or to help them find friends and get into friend groups, or to take them off of screens, because all of those things are negative. When we give someone an SSRI, a lot of times it is just like that friend that says, here's your sweatpants, here's your ice cream, just chill, we're good. And when we do that to children and we don't help them make behavioral modifications, they look like they're doing better, but in reality, their health is still as bad as it's ever been. When we have a child that's overindulging and they're looking for dopamine, or they have really negative dopamine-seeking behaviors, when we give them serotonin reuptake inhibitors, we're masking the underlying problem. The executive order that's out there right now by Donald Trump and by RFK is, we're going to fix why they're sick. So it didn't actually say we're taking away their medications. It said they're going to look at the overmedication of children. This isn't even a new thing. During the Biden administration, and actually before that in the Obama administration, they both had executive orders for us as pharmacists to specifically look at any psychoactive drug inside of populations that are inside of nursing homes. That included SSRIs. They determined that people in nursing homes were being given SSRIs at too high of a rate without trying to decrease it. So as a pharmacist for the last, 15 years, I sit in clinical meetings where I am trying to get people who are in nursing homes, whose lives are not really improving in most cases, who are elderly, off of their SSRIs. So we never saw a headline that said President Obama is trying to take away old people's SSRIs. But he was. But he wasn't doing it because it was bad. He was doing it because we were over-medicating these seniors inside of nursing homes. And by doing so, over the last 15 years, I've found remarkable success with it as long as we take long periods of time to take them off. People that have been on SSRIs for 20 or 30 years, once we get them established, get them better eating habits, they have regular activities, we find non-pharmacological approaches to it. When you take them off of it, they become more alert, they're happier, they laugh more, because that's one thing we don't talk about with SSRIs. They don't actually make you happier. They just numb both sides, so you just feel okay. We're going to find the same thing in kids. Once we're able to get rid of the underlying problems of overconsumption, whether it's food or it's screens or whatever it is, you're going to find those kids naturally moving to a state where they're finding more joy. And yes, there will always be a subsection of the population, and I'm going to stress this again. I know lots of people who should be on antidepressants for life. I know lots of people that should be on insulin for life. I know lots of people who should be on blood pressure medications for life. Each one of us is genetically made different. What we're talking about today on this podcast is a very specific subsection of individuals who we're talking about, children who are now taking higher rates of antidepressants than any place else in the world. And I don't mean number of patients. I mean the population number. We're almost double per capita any place else in the world that takes antidepressants. How can we live in a world with the most stuff and the most depressed children? The answer is that we need to change how we're raising our children, what we're giving to them. Now, I've had children myself who've been on antidepressants, and at the time they needed it. But in the same time, we looked at their lifestyle, we changed their school schedule, we started getting them help elsewhere, we put them into groups, we started getting them office screens. There were so many things. And part of it had to do with me as a father. I was not involved enough because I was so busy at work. I started taking time with my kids. I knew I failed. So this isn't me saying, look how wonderful I am. This is actually me admitting to everybody out there, I should have done better. And because of it, they needed it. But over time, we talk to them, and as we adjust their lifestyle, they quite often are able to come off of it. They start a new school, they start into college, they're going to need it for a while. Then after they get used to college, it goes away once we give them all the tools. What a great tool we have. So everybody's out there saying that RFK hates antidepressants and that he's trying to take them away. So I wanted to read to you the exact wordage that he has here. One of the administration's goals is to assess the prevalence and threat posed by prescriptions of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, and stimulants, and weight loss drugs. So what it is they're going to assess the prevalence and threat posed by. They didn't say they were going to take them. They said they were going to look at it and see what the threat is and why we're so much higher. The underlying goal of the whole movement right now is to try to make us healthier. If they were to not assess it and we kept moving at the rate that we are right now, imagine how many kids will be on them for the rest of their lives. Assessing a problem and coming up with a solution is huge, whereas just taking them away is just good clickbait. One more thing before I go. This is the one that I want to bring home for you. 1 out of 4 women in the ages of 40 to 60 are on antidepressants. They're the highest level. 25% of women 40 to 60 are on antidepressants during the exact same time that menopause happens. Menopause means a reduction, and by the time it's done, almost gone, of your estrogen. Estrogen and serotonin are best friends. When estrogen's high, serotonin's high. When estrogen's low, serotonin's low. There are so many women that are on SSRIs right now that could be on hormone replacement instead. And when you do that, that SSRI need starts to go away. So in that specific subsection, I would tell anybody who's from the age of 40 to 60 and you are on an SSRI, I would have your estrogen levels looked at, and I would talk to a clinician and see if maybe you'll benefit from that. Because it's really interesting that our first move is to put women on an SSRI rather than looking at their estrogen levels and saying, which of these two would you rather be on? Because there's always a downside and an upside to everything. My name's Philip. I am a pharmacist of 25 years. Today, we've been talking all about how RFK doesn't really hate antidepressants, but rather he hates overmedication of Americans and thinks we can do better.